What's a weird intimate request that lives rent-free in your memory? Story 1. I was talking to a girl on Craigslist years ago who had a humiliation fetish. She wanted to drink a ton of water and meet me at the movies, and then sit there for the full movie, and near the end wanted me to start tickling her until she peed herself. And then we would walk out of the theater and everyone would see her wet spot. Yeah, I never met up with her. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. My ex-girlfriend once pranked me by biting on my dong during a BJ and then had a theater blood capsule in her mouth. She bit down on it and there was tons of blood everywhere. I freaked out and ran around screaming with my erect blood-dripping lance around in the flat and alerted my parents, who came running and got shocked into trauma multiple times in a fraction of a second. I thought my GF was screaming too, but the noises she made were part trying to call me back, part uncontrollable laughter with huge amounts of artificial blood in her mouth. It was an awesome prank, but it gives me nightmares to this very day, and my parents saw things they won't ever forget. Story 3. Met a girl on Tinder. Through conversation, she explained that she had a banging in public places fetish and she wanted me to bang her in the dressing room at Walmart. I met her at Walmart and we start walking towards the dressing rooms. I'm 6 foot even and this girl was at most 5'4". She also looked and sounded too young for 24. Started talking about things with her, things a 24-year-old would know. She was completely miffed. We get to the dressing room, she sheds her shirt and motions me to follow her inside, and I stopped. Me. Are you over the age of 18? Because you don't look 24. Her. Okay, I might have lied on my Tinder profile. Me. How old are you? She then tries to drag me by the arm into the dressing room, and I stood my ground. I repeated my question. Her. Now crying. Okay, fine, I'm 14, but you met me and you seem totally sweet, so let's just forget about my age. I noped out of there. I was 30. No frickin' way. Blocked her and reported her on Tinder on my way to my car. Grand cataclysm averted. Story 4. Long story, but met an old friend after many years to play soccer with an adult team. We were around 22 and most guys around 26. Before practice, one guy's telling a story about a girl. He kept referring to one of his friends. I mean, you saw her, she was hot and definitely looked at least 21. And he said this over and over. His friend agreed, but then mentioned she did seem dumb. Like you said, in general conversations about things adults should know. But his buddy backed him up. She looked of age and she was super hot. Long story short, he eventually banged her one day at her house. Her dad comes home and starts banging on the door, but she's on top and won't stop. Dad breaks down the door and the guy decides it's now a good time to split, but walks outside to cops. One holds him up and questions him while one goes inside. He said both cops seemed cool at first until the second one came back out from the house with questions about how they met, how long he knew here, etc. He didn't know how old she was. He said he met her at a bar and she was in junior college as far as he knew. Cop tells him he's 15. Guy immediately starts involuntary projectile vomiting in the grass. The cop tells him his reaction saved his life because it seemed genuine, but he has to go back and talk to the dad. He told him if the dad presses charges, he's screwed, but he will at least try to explain the situation to him. Dad was affluent and didn't want publicity around it, and didn't press charges. But dude was scared crapless that he was almost a prison chomo. Anyway, wild story to hear in detail, literally the first second of meeting the guy. Story 5. I had a guy in high school ask to sleep with me as he had a seizure fetish, and I never hid that I have seizures. My best friend noticed he had strobe lights in his bag, and gently pulled them out of his bag and stomped and broke them in the bathroom. Story 6. I was blowing this guy with whiskey dong to see what I could make happen, and he told me to use teeth. I was like, you sure? But I did. Harder, he says. So I'm heavily scraping up and down his dong, and he straight up told me to bite it. I nibbled, like hard. I bit harder, but didn't want to bite too hard and draw blood. But then he goes, bite it like you hate it, like a dog with a chew toy. So I was like, if you say so, and bit the thing as hard as I could. And he lets out this part growl / part battle cry / part yes noise that the neighbors probably heard. And then told me to sit on his face, and that was that. A fun fact, biting a slightly hard dong feels like biting a water balloon that won't break. I was legit worried it would unexpectedly pop or something. It felt so weird and fragile. Story 7. It doesn't only live rent-free in my memory, but is also a part of my intimate life. My girlfriend has a belly / belly button kink and wants it to be licked and sucked. It was our first time and I was sucking her breasts. She pushed my head down, so I thought she wanted me to go down on her, so I did. But then she started pulling me back up again, till my face was on top of her belly button. She told me to lick it please, and she moaned when I did. I was pretty surprised, as I had no idea that the human body could do that, and I had never heard of it from any of my partners or friends. I giggled, and she looked so annoyed. 5 years together, and I'm still sucking and biting the wrong hole. She also likes being bitten there, so she is always covered in hickeys in her abdomen. In short, she has some belly lore. Story 8. I was 16 and spending a long weekend at a friend with benefits house while her parents were away for the weekend. First 2 days go great. Lots of banging, weed, and great times overall. Then the morning of the third day comes and her parents text saying they're coming home that evening instead of the next day. Our first thought was basically bang like rabbits to make up for our lost day, which she said should happen on her parents' bed, which I was okay with, but sometime during, she asks me to nut in her mother's creams, body wash, shampoos, etc. I stopped mid-thrust and was like, excuse me, what? I asked if it was for revenge purposes, but nope. She said she'd actually just enjoy the thought of her mother walking around covered in my nut when she touches herself. Just no. I did not want my DNA all over more than there already was the place, and possibly blackmail or whatever. Story 9. I did escort work a few years back, and I was shocked at how many men have a humiliation fetish. When I got my first request to rate someone's dong, I was like, okay, I'd never heard of that before, but was like, hell, I say you have a nice dong if you want to pay me $50, I guess. Nope, that wasn't it at all. These men wanted me to straight up roast their dong pics. Like full on, yeah, I'd never bang you with that tiny little thing. You should be ashamed of that pathetic crap kind of roasting. I got so many requests for that and it blew my mind. And the types of men that wanted that was even more strange. Most of the requests actually came from big gym alpha brain bros, so every time I meet a guy who's obsessed with the gym and bulking up, all I can think is, you like being told you got a tiny dong, don't you, Squidward? Story 10. I delivered pizza to this pretty haggard old lady in a basement apartment. She welcomed me into the apartment and was kind of limping around grabbing cash while I waited right inside the door. She starts making the light, how's your night going, small talk, and then says, you know, you're pretty hot for a pizza guy, which wasn't true at all at the time, by the way. I just replied, thanks, and chuckled it off. She gives me the money and tells me to keep the change as a tip, then looks at me awkwardly for a second, and what she said next will live rent-free in my head for the rest of my life. She says, in a very thick Minnesotan accent that I can't do, so, do you wanna bang or something? I don't know what my face looked like when I heard those words uttered, but I just hope I didn't hurt her feelings because I was gobsmacked. I gathered myself after a moment and informed her I was flattered, but I had a girlfriend at home that wouldn't appreciate it and bid her a swell evening. Bonus edit. Also, one time I was happily in the act of fornicating with a very nice girl I dated for a short period of time. She was on top of me and started to laugh to herself. I kind of slowed down and said, what's funny? To which she replied, oh, I was just thinking it would be kind of funny and hot if I punched you in the face right now. I just quickly said, well, please don't. She shrugged it off and we finished our business. We only dated another couple of weeks and broke it off very amicably. Funny enough, she expressed wanting to continue a friends with benefits situation after, so I don't think the lack of face punching was a deal breaker. Story 11. When I dated this girl for 6 weeks over a decade ago, and she specifically told me she had gotten the birth control shot and wanted to bang without a rubber. I guess you could say a breeding fetish, but before the term was used. I broke up with her, and 2 weeks later I got a picture message of a positive pregnancy test. My son is almost a teenager now. I absolutely love him to death and had to take her to court to be able to have shared custody. I'm pretty good at co-parenting and being polite/respectful to her, but a small part of me deep down inside still absolutely despises her, and I don't think that's gonna change. Story 12. Date wanted me to jam it down her throat. I tried, but as soon as she gagged, I stopped because I'm a gentleman. She grabbed me and told me to keep going no matter how much she gagged and drooled until I came deep down in her throat. I did what she wanted, and when I finished, she thought it was wonderful. I never saw her again, and sometimes when I think about it, I find it arousing, but other times it worries me because I don't know if she just loved it or something scary happened in her childhood. Story 13. I had a weird intimate encounter when I was in my 20s. This woman messaged me on a dating site and she seems nice. We go to a restaurant. I believe she insisted on paying the bill, invites me to her place to watch a movie. She puts on a Woody Allen film. So before the movie is over, things are getting physical. She pauses and tells me she has to explain something to me. She says she's bi and is only interested in men physically, and this will never go anywhere romantically. Sure, no problem, lady. She explains that if I see her in public, especially with a woman, pretend that I don't know her. Okay. She also explains that she primarily likes Jewish men. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I'm just kind of in awe of this woman and her sexuality. She falls in love with women and just wants to get pounded by Jewish men. Story 14. I'm an intimate worker and have been asked a wide range of strange, funny, creepy, and sad things. I'm quite normal myself, so mostly I just say no and forget about it, but a few stuck with me. This guy wants me to meet him at a rented vacation house. Doesn't want to bang, just to jerk it, watching me while I'm peeing on some random folks' furniture in their hand soap behind the couch. I don't know, I guess you really hate your ex-wife? I'll pass. Another asked if possible that he came around and bought all of the used rubbers I had collected in the last day or two. Would pay me $500. DNA? Who are you trying to get arrested for an assault? Nah, I'll pass. Some dude seriously offers me 100,000 DKR, 18,000 USD, to be in a snuff film he was directing. Oh yeah, I'm sure I would regret that awesome offer when I'm on a cross with wires out of my kitty, suddenly remembering what snuff means. Yeah, I'm gonna pass. Thanks very much. Edit. Another worker told a story further down and it reminded me of this other one. Years ago, a girl let me rent her apartment in a new city. I was new to the job, maybe 4 months in. When I arrived, she asked me if I wanted to rent her blow-up doll as well. She would then split the earned money with me if it was rented out. I was speechless. Who would choose the doll over a real, live girl? Well, screw me, I guess, or not. The first two guys chose the blow-up doll. Yeah, confidence shattered into 1,000 pieces. Story 15. So every school has that kid that everyone kind of fears will be the next active shooter. In high school, that kid convinced me to give him my number before I realized how messed up he was. I then have to do everything in my power to gently tell him that I don't want to be his friend anymore. He finally takes the hint and leaves me alone. We don't talk for a few months, then in the middle of summer break, I get woken up by a text. Him, would you breastfeed if you had a baby? Now, I'm like 1% awake, so assumed it was my friend I had been texting before bed because I only ever text her and my family. I say, yeah, why? Him, then can you send me a picture, please? Insert a long paragraph pleading with me and saying he just wants to see them and that it's not creepy and I must be okay with it if I were breastfeeding. I immediately screenshot it and sent it to my friend who, thank God, woke up and replied to me to just ignore him because I was on the brink of actually replying. He kept sending pleases and after an hour it turned to threats. I finally pasted the Verizon text for the auto reply when a message doesn't go through. Thankfully, he gave up, but I was terrified to go back to school the next year. Luckily, I never saw him there. Story 16. Having done intimate work formerly, well, in person, still got some online going, it is a close call between the dude who shook my hand at the door and visibly nut, or I guess maybe just slightly peed himself through his clothes. White linen trousers hid very little in that regard. Then excused to vomit violently, handed me the money, thanked me, and asked me to leave, versus the guy who was full on Patrick Bateman eye-banging himself in the mirror and flexing and making faces at his reflection the whole time, all while actually being massively sub in the entire scenario. Story 17. I almost hooked up with someone that had a consensual non-consensual fetish. We were both in our early 20s and met at some fitness class on our summer break. Things went pretty well on our first date, so I brought her back to where I was living, my parents' house. When we were about to hook up, she kept telling me she was into CNC and had ropes in her car. I thought maybe she was joking until I realized she wasn't. I was pretty awful at it because every time she said no, I just instinctively stopped. Just when I thought it couldn't get more awkward, my mom pulls into the driveway. Honestly, it was the only time I was ever happy to see her car in this situation. The hookup girl and I threw on clothes quick and sneak out the front door, and my mom comes in the back door. I never spoke to her again. Story 18. I dated this woman who requested that my friend and I cut a hole right under both sides of her ribcage and then do the deed with the hole. That one came right out of left field after she met my friend while we were at a party together. She also told me to ask my friend to call her a pig while we did it. This was about 3 months into the relationship, and after I told her that I would never be comfortable with this, and neither would my friend, she dumped me less than a week later. Irene, I don't know if you're out here, but I hope sincerely that you either came to your senses or found someone who would literally rearrange your insides. Story 19. I was 17 and she was 16. Both our first real intimate partners. We mainly just fooled around a lot, hand and mouth stuff. One day, we're in her room, watching anime and being handsy. She starts jerking me off under the blanket. I finish and some gets on her. I apologize and she says, "Oh, no worries," and gets up to go to the bathroom and cleans it up. You know those little blue Blistex lip balm containers, the ones with the lid that screw on? Hear me out here, it'll all make sense in a second. Weeks later, yes, weeks, we're back in her room having a friskily tinted yet emotionally vulnerable conversation. Her, "Hey, you know how much you mean to me, right? Is it okay if I show you something?" Yeah, sure. She reaches under her bed and grabs said Blistex container. Remember when you came under the blanket and got some on me? I scooped it up and save it in this. I keep it next to me because it reminds me of you. It smells like you and that turns me on. She proceeds to open the container and show it to me. It was the most rancid, god-awful smell I have ever experienced in my life. I started retching instantly, but this was my first serious girlfriend and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So rather than saying what I actually thought at the time, which was, what the actual frick, who does that? I just said, aw, that's so sweet. We never spoke of that night again. Story 21. Had an ex that had an assault fetish. She asked that I come over to her house when no one was home through the backyard door and, be creative about it. She gave me a green light to destroy property, use violence, etc. I never went through with it as it's not really my thing, but I always think about it. She was a really pretty girl and I really hoped she just wasn't trying to recreate a difficult moment for herself to try to adjust. I think about her often and just hope she's doing alright. Story 22. This one happened to me last night, and I'm afraid it's going to live in my head rent-free forever. I was asked to gag myself until I puked and cried. I understand that there's a vomit fetish thing that seems to be having its moment right now, but to me, making myself gag and vomit doesn't seem anything sexy in any way, shape, or form. I'm sure there would have been some follow-up, which I don't even want to know what it would have been, but still, it's almost like fetishizing bulimia or something. I just can't wrap my head around it. Even though I do understand the concept of humiliation, controlling a woman, treating her like crap, yada yada yada, bleh, just no. Story 23. I had this fling with a virgin girl. During the act, she was absolutely adamant that I had to, and I kid you not, bang her in the butt so she can become a nympho. After a short rest, I asked if she did anything back there before. She says, no sir. Well, crap, let me get some extra lube and give my best shot. After trying that for a while, it didn't work out, so we just went back to business as usual. Once done, I asked if she enjoyed her first, to which she said, I'm very upset. I enjoyed the banging, but my BFF had her first time with a black dude with a huge dong, and he went through the back, and she's been a nympho ever since. I was never more confused during and after banging. She kept going back to it, so I told her, too bad I'm white and have a small dong. To which she said, no, I think my body may be lesbian. Yeah, this entire experience lives rent-free in my mind. Story 24. First one, he wanted me to slap him, choke him, and called me mommy. All of these things I did, and they weren't necessarily weird, but definitely out of my comfort zone as I was only used to being the submissive one. The other one was a breeding kink. I was 17 at the time, and it happened with a long-term on-and-off boyfriend, and it happened every time after the first, for about 2 years. But he wouldn't even listen to what I might be interested in. I had no interest in that. Terrifying to realize how young I was to even let that happen.